G'day guys, I was driving my 200 series the other day and did some weird things. Check engine light came on, the VSC light started flashing, and it threw a code on my ultra gauge P2099, which is turbocharger A underboost. So I did a bit of research, and this is a bit of a tutorial of how to fix it. Not saying that this is specifically what your P2099 is, but it's a possibility. Certainly was the problem for my engine. Anyway, let's have a look at it. So in my case, this was the problem. This is a filter, also I guess it's a dampener, but mainly to filter any oil fumes, and it connects to the map sensor. And the map sensor is at the back of the engine underneath the intercooler. Now a lot of people get scared at this point and go, oh, taking the intercooler off. The intercooler coming off these things is real easy. It takes about 20 minutes, so I'll show you that full steps. This is the one that I pulled out, and unfortunately I should have taken a photo of it before I started messing with it. But it had a tiny little crack right here, and there was actually a little bit of oily residue on this part. This is the lower part, so the filter sits this way. This part connects to the manifold, and this part connects to the map sensor. They are quite hard to get to. That's why you've got to pull the intercooler off. So this is how you do it. Start with the cover on the intercooler, which is just two 10mm bolts here. Okay, tools you'll need for this job: 10mm socket, short extension, long extension, screwdriver to help undo the plugs, obviously quarter drive. If you haven't got them, that's okay. You can get around using it, but a 10mm and a 12mm ratcheting ring open ender, very handy. And for the larger 12mm bolts, find a short socket, a long socket, a short extension, and 3/8 drive, and a torch, and that's all you need. It's pretty easy. Next step is the intercooler inlet and outlet, which is just these two nuts here, and on the opposite side here, here, and then these two hoses here, and they are 12mm. The two hose clamps on the inlet, two pipes are 10mm. You can use a Phillips head, but I prefer to use a 10mm socket. Two mounting bolts at the front, 12mm. And at the back, I'll take you off the tripod to show you this. This bracket here, which is held on by two 10mm bolts, is actually in the way of getting to the two 12mm nuts mounting. So you just take those off. This bracket is actually what holds the plastic shield in place at the back. So be very careful you don't drop the bolts down the back, otherwise that's a bit of a pain. These type of ratcheting head spanners are really handy. Right, now, something else to be aware of when you get to this point. This hose will be a little bit hard to get off until you wiggle the intercooler, but something else to note is there's a temperature sensor and plug at the back of the intercooler. So just be careful when you're taking it off, just be mindful that it's there. It's a little bit hard to get to, especially when you've got not small hands like me. Something I forgot to mention, because you're working in close proximity to the positive terminal here, disconnect your batteries. Should have done that at the start. So this hose is actually easier to take off the lower hose on the tube there and leave this top one in place. Be careful when you're moving the intercooler around, and you want to be careful not to damage the fins. Once you've undone the plug, correction, two plugs, the other one is at the MAF sensor. I need to show you that. This is the temperature sensor plug, and the MAF sensor is also mounted to the intercooler as well, so there's another plug in there, a little bit hard to see. You also have a hose going to the MAP sensor. And there's your intercooler. So just for a bit of clarity, this is upside down there. This is your map sensor. The vacuum hose connects to here, and then the little filter, which I'll show you in a sec, connects on the engine. This is also your temperature sensor here. Rightio, so your map sensor normally sits in that little bracket just there. Because I was waiting for the part to come in, I just bypassed it with a piece of hose, which you can do for a short period of time. And that's what your engine looks like without a intercooler on top. Okay, ordered from Amayama or Partsuk, I can't remember, overseas. This is the replacement filter, part number 909171036, but obviously check your model. I'm pretty sure it's standard across the 200 range. And that's all it is, just a little plastic filter. The grey side goes down and is the inlet, and the white side is the outlet. Also ordered new vacuum hoses. You really don't need to do that. Standard vacuum hose will do, but I got it anyway. So this is part number 90999-92002. But as I said, it's just standard vacuum hose, so you can use generic stuff from Repco or any other car part supplier. One thing I like to do, especially with these inaccessible hoses, is put a zip tie on them. After all, it is measuring manifold air pressure, so turbocharger pressure. Just gives it just a little bit more security. The hose that they send is about double the length you need. The one that came off it was only that long. I'm going to give myself a little bit extra length just for accessibility. So probably about 100-150 mil. Whenever you've got access to things that you can't normally see, take the opportunity to have a look over things. Just for anything obvious, cracks in hoses, wire that's chafing, anything that's loose, anything that's leaking. Because most of this you can't see but with the intercooler in place. Be careful with the plugs, especially any plugs and wiring looms that are on top of the engine. As the vehicle ages and heat cycles happen, plastic becomes brittle, so don't go wiggling plugs hard. They will crack, they will break, but just inspect them, see if there's any damage. Generally, if they're looking good and they're undisturbed, leave them undisturbed. heater hoses, although you can see them, these ones from outside the intercooler, these ones are underneath, so have a look at them. Again, check security. This is the pigtail of the new piece of tubing to go to the map sensor when I get the intercooler back in place. Because I want to try and protect the intercooler as much as possible, probably should have done this at the beginning. Put a rag over these two front mounting pins. Just make sure you account for your rags when you're completing the install. A little bit hard to film this part, but I'll show you in a sec what I'm doing. Just connecting the vacuum tube to the bottom of the MAF and then zip tying it. Be very careful with the MAF, it's only plastic. Sorry, map sensor. It's a bit humid here in the territory this morning. Days are beautiful though. Look at that, spectacular. But the morning humidity is a little bit up. Okay, just to show you what I've done there. So having a little bit extra length of that vacuum line, pretty sure you can see it there. Just got to cut that pigtail off the zip tie. And then do up those two plugs, which is actually easier than undoing them. And then start the reassembly process. Again, a little bit hard to film that part. It is actually easier to have both of these hose clamps loose. Right, and it's just a reversal of the installation process. Prefer to get everything finger tight to begin with. Right, once you've got everything tightened up, and assuming that you haven't dropped the 10mm socket which tried to hide itself from me, then it's just putting the intercooler cover back on. And reconnect your batteries. Righto, so that's it. If your Land Cruiser 200 is throwing a P2099 code, that's quite possibly the fault. The symptoms were that, the GoPro camera battery died for this last bit. All I was going to say was the symptoms that I had was the check engine and VSC lights were on constant and the 4 low light was flashing. That's a fairly common thing for when the car goes into limp mode. It was certainly reduced power and would not go any higher than 4th gear, no matter even if you selected it with the Sports Select. So the final wash up was a tiny crack in that filter. That's allowing some of the turbo pressure to bleed off, and the ECM or the ECU still knows that the turbos are producing pressure, but there's a mismatch, hence why it's throwing that code. Could also be the vacuum leak or a vacuum line crack would also cause the same code. So I hope that helps. Please like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.